Hi everyone. Today I'm taking a look at the Georgia Guidestones. And if we are all aware, we know who made these stones, that they were recently blown up, and that it wasn't some random person who was angry with who made them or the message that was written on them. It was deliberately done. If you don't know what was written on these stones, I suggest you go and investigate the plan for humanity by the 1% that was described in many different languages, how they would maintain humanity at 500 million, and that basically this was just a blueprint for Tikkun Olam. Repair the world, because according to the Talmudic text, these people are both the destroyers and the creators of the world. So if you look at the time in the top right corner, the explosion happens at 4:33 a.m. and they love to use their number 33 numerology. They love to say Jesus was 33 when he died, and he wasn't 33. This is them assigning this number to Jesus. And why have they done this? It's because they say, or are referring to, that they cut him off at 33. And this is not factual. It's not in the Bible. Historically, Jesus was anywhere between the age of 30 and 39 during his ministry. So the reason why they do this is the spine is called the serpent in their Kabbalah, and it has 33 vertebrae. And the 33rd is at the neck or the head. So they're saying, by saying Jesus was 33 when he died, that they cut off the serpent's head at 33. And the Bible says, "He shall crush your head and you will bruise his heel." And that's opposed to what Jesus said, "Destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up." So after the stones were blown up, the rest of the stones were demolished completely. But I'm not talking about Georgia Guidestones today. I'm talking about why Georgia and what's so specific about this name in particular and why they're using it. And perhaps another reason why they put the stones in the state of Georgia, USA. So I'm talking about Georgia, the country. So Georgia is a country in the Caucasus Mountains at the intersection of Eastern Europe and West Asia. It is bound by the Black Sea to the west, by Russia to the north and east, by Turkey to the southwest and Armenia to the south. Georgia is extremely close to what's happening now in the Ukraine and Russia. And that's not just in proximity, it's also in politics. We can see here in this image exactly where it's located. There are a lot of Georgian Jews. So Georgian Jews are a community of Jews who migrated to Georgia during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BCE. It is one of the oldest communities in that land, and it's one of the oldest communities of Jews on earth. So Jews have been in Georgia and controlling Georgia for an extremely long amount of time. Georgian Jews are a community of Jews who migrated to Georgia during the Babylonian captivity in the 6th century BCE. It is one of the oldest communities in that land. Prior to Georgia's annexation by the Russian Empire in 1801, the Georgian Jews are considered ethnically and culturally distinct from neighboring mountain Jews. They are also traditionally a highly separate group from the Ashkenazi Jews in Georgia, who arrived following the Russian annexation of Georgia. As a result of a major immigration wave in the 1990s, the vast majority of Georgian Jews now live in Israel, with the world's largest community living in the city of Ashdod. So traditionally, Georgian Jews lived separately not only from the surrounding Georgian people but also from the Ashkenazi Jews in Tbilisi, who had different practices and languages. The community, which numbered about 80,000 as recently as the 1970s, has largely emigrated to Israel, the United States, the Russian Federation, and Belgium in Antwerp. Now, for any Aussies who are listening to this, the name Morrison is a Belgian Jewish name. So we have our ex-Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who is likely of Belgian Jewish origin. As of 2004, only about 13,000 Georgian Jews remained in Georgia. Georgian-speaking Jewry is one of the oldest surviving Jewish communities in the world. Georgian Jews have an approximately 2,600-year-old history in Colchis. Now, Colchis is the ancient name for Georgia. The origin of Georgian Jews, also known as Gurjim or Katvali Ebralibi, is debated. The most popular view is that the first Jews made their way to southern Georgia after Nebuchadnezzar's conquest of Jerusalem in 586 BCE and exile in Babylon. This claim is supported by medieval Georgian historical account of Leonti Meravelli, who writes, "Then King Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem. The Jews who fled thence came to Kartil and requested from Mamashekilisi, local ruler of Meshketa, territory in rule of tribute. He gave a place and settled them on the Aragvi at Spring, which was called Zanavi, which was later named as Zanavi, the quarter of Jews." Moravelli later added that a further settlement of Jews in Georgia was during the Roman period of Emperor Vespasian. He wrote that Jews lived in Georgia long before the 1st century CE, according to Meravelli. During their Batum and Katam's region, Vespasian, the emperor of the Romans, captured Jerusalem. From there, refugee Jews come to Mekshita and settled with the old Jews. The ancient Georgian historic chronicle, the Conversion of Kartil, is the oldest and only Georgian source concerning the history of the Jewish community in Georgia. The chronicle describes a version similar to that offered centuries later by Leonti, but the period of Jewish migration to Georgia is ascribed to Alexander the Great. The warlike seed, the Honai Jews, exiled by the Chaldeans, came to Kartil and requested the land for tribute from the lord of the Bun Turks. And they, Jews, settled in Zanavi and they possessed it. So after the Six-Day War, huge numbers of Soviet Jews began protesting for the right to immigrate to Israel, and many applied for exit visas. Georgian Jews made up a large percentage of this number. Many Georgian Jews now live in Israel. In the United States, the principal Georgian Jewish synagogue is the Congregation of Georgian Jews in the Forest Hill section of Queens, New York City. In Belgium, most Georgian Jews are members of the Antwerp Jewish community. One of the most famous Georgian Jews was Joseph Stalin. He was a Georgian revolutionary and Soviet political leader who led the Soviet Union from 1922 until his death in 1953. He held power as General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union and Chairman of the Council of Ministers of the Soviet Union. Initially governing the country as part of a collective leadership, he consolidated power to become a dictator by the 1930s. Ideologically adhering to the Leninist interpretation of Marxism, he formalized these ideas as Marxism, Leninism, while his own policies are called Stalinism. And I dare say we could call it the Rabbinism, because it would have come straight from the rabbis. Stalin was also a psychopath, and even people in his own circle were not safe. If you did something that Stalin approved of, he would kill you so that you could not challenge his authority. And there were, under communist reign, something like 600 million to 700 million people die as a result of Bolshevism. So Herod of Chalcis, or Colchis, also known as Herod Polio, king of Chalcis, Herod V, and listed by Jewish Encyclopedia as Herod II. I don't think he was Herod II. However, was a son of Aristobulus IV and grandson of Herod the Great, Roman client king of Judea. He was the brother of Herod Agrippa I and Herodias. So, talk about confusing. We don't really know which one this Herod is because he has so many different names. And we could see that some of these names are Roman. For example, Herod Polio, which will come up shortly. Now, as we know, Herod was an Idumean. The Herod family were Idumean Edomites who had converted to the Jewish faith at the time of the Maccabees. And the Edomites or the Idumeans were descendants of Esau and not descendants of Jacob, who was the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. So the Herod family had a following called the Herodians. According to Wikipedia, the Herodians were a sect of Hellenistic Jews mentioned in the New Testament on 2 occasions, first in Galilee and later in Jerusalem, being hostile to Jesus. In each of these cases, their name is coupled with that of the Pharisees. According to many interpreters, the courtiers or soldiers of Herod Antipas were intended. Others argue that the Herodians were probably a public political party who distinguished themselves from the two great historical parties of post-exilic Judaism, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, by the fact that they were and had been sincerely friendly to Herod the Great. Now, I believe that these are the Idumean converts. There's only one group of people in Judea at that time who was going to follow the Herodians, and that would be the Idumean converts, because any person who was descended from the Israelites or followed the Torah would have refused to have an Edomite king. Now, this is from Bible Hub concerning Polio and Samius. Herod slays the principal and says how Sosius and Herod took Jerusalem by force, and besides that, how they took Antigonus captive, has been related by us in the foregoing book. We will now proceed in the narration since Herod and now the government of all Judea put into his hands, he promoted such of the private men in the city as had been of his party, but never left of avenging and punishing every day those that had chosen to be of the party of his enemies. But Polio, the Pharisee, and Samius, a disciple of his, were honoured by him above all the rest, for when Jerusalem was besieged, they advised the citizens to receive Herod, foretold in way of reproach to Hyrcanus and the other judges, how this Herod, whom they suffered now to escape, would afterward inflict punishment on them all, which had its completion in time, while God fulfilled the words he had spoken. So is it possible that this Polio, the Pharisee, and Samius were Edomite converts in the temple system? You know, we had the conversion of the Edomites back in the time of the Maccabees. They had infiltrated into the priesthood and the hierarchy. And here we have a Polio, which related, a name related to the Herod family. We have Herod of Chalcis, Herod Polio, advising people to allow Herod in and to be king and to take over Judea. At that time, the Pharisees and the Sadducees had been infiltrated by Edomite converts, and the Herodians were a political party. They were not part of the temple. So this is why they're separate to the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They're a political party, not a priesthood. So known for their sensuality and corrupt living, the Herodians were supporters of the policies and government of the Herodian Herod family. They were a political rather than a religious party. The Herodians distinguished themselves from the two great religious political parties of the day, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, by the fact that they were sincerely friendly to Herod the Great and to his dynasty. The ruling dynasty that the Herodians supported was begun by Julius Caesar in 47 BC, when he appointed Antipater I, the Idumean, to be the procurator of Judea. His son Herod the Great began to rule Judea in 37 BC, and Herod Antipas, son of Herod the Great, became Tetrarch of Galilee and Perea in 4 BC. After the death of his father, it was this Herod who jailed and beheaded John the Baptist and who sent Jesus to Pilate after his arrest. So Jesus, early in his ministry, attended the synagogue of the Sabbath, where he healed a man's withered hand. The Pharisees who saw the miracle believed Jesus broke the Sabbath because they considered the healing work. Jesus' trespass of their man-made rules, not God's law, motivated their hard hearts to seek and help the Herodians to murder him in Mark 3:1-6. This is the first plot against Jesus mentioned in the Gospels and the first time that followers of Herod are mentioned in the New Testament. On another occasion, the Pharisees wanted to try and trap Jesus into stating something which could be construed as being against the Roman government. Their plan was to send some of their disciples and some Herodians to Jesus and have them ask him a certain honest question in Mark 22:15-16 and Mark 12:13-14. The question was, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Shall we pay or shall we not pay? Mark 12:14-15. Those who heard his response were amazed. And Jesus answered and said to them, render the things of Caesar to Caesar and the things of God to God. So we all should remember the story of Salome as she danced for the head of John the Baptist. And Salome, the daughter of Herod II and Herodias, granddaughter of Herod the Great and stepdaughter of Herod Antipas, is known for the New Testament where she is not named and from an account by Flavius Josephus. This is where they get her name. In the New Testament, the stepdaughter of Herod Antipas demands and receives the head of John the Baptist. According to Josephus, she was first married to her uncle Philip the Tetrarch, after whose death in AD 34 she married her cousin Aristobulus of Chalcis, thus becoming the queen of Chalcis and Armenia Minor. So Aristobulus of Chalcis was the son of Herod of Chalcis, and he inherited his father's kingdom eventually. So he was the son of Herod of Chalcis, and his first wife Mariamne, Herod of Chalcis, ruler of Chalcis in Iturea, was a grandson of Herod the Great through his father Aristobulus IV. Mariamne was a granddaughter of Herod the Great through her mother Olympias. Hence, Aristobulus was a great-grandson of Herod the Great on both sides of his inbred family. Aristobulus was married to Salome after the death of her first husband, Philip the Tetrarch. With her, Aristobulus had 3 sons, Herod, Agrippa, and Aristobulus. 3 coins with portraits of him and Salome have been found. Aristobulus did not directly succeed his father as ruler of Chalcis. Rather, upon his father's death in 48 AD, the Emperor Claudius gave the realm to Aristobulus' first cousin, Herod Agrippa II. When in 53 AD, Agrippa was given the territories previously governed by Philip the Tetrarch, also known as Herod Philip II and Lysanias. Aristobulus was subsequently given Chalcis in 57 AD. He reigned Chalcis until his death in 92 AD, when the territory became part of the Roman province Syria. He has been identified with the Aristobulus appointed by Nero as king of Armenia Minor in 55 AD, who participated with his forces in the Roman-Parthian Wars of 58 to 63, receiving a small portion of Greater Armenia in exchange. This Aristobulus was displaced from Armenia Minor in 72 AD, but is thought to be the Aristobulus of Chalcidice, who supported Lucius Caesarius Paetus, Procol of Syria, in the war against Antiochus of Commagene in 73 AD, and was in consequence compensated with a new kingdom, probably Chalcis ad Balaam or modern Quinisrin in southern Syria. Assuming all these Aristobuluses indeed were the same person, he would seem to have been ruler at various times of the Iturian Chalcis, Armenian Minor, and Chalcis ad Balaam. So in Aristobulus's family tree, we have no further record of his two sons, or Salome's two sons, or their daughter, and we can assume that they didn't just drop off the face of the planet and that their genetic line came to an end simply because there's no historical records, or the historical records have been hidden. We can assume that they went on in political scenes throughout the Roman Empire, either in this area or somewhere else within the Roman Empire. But I think they may have continued on in this area and in this region of what is today modern day Georgia. Now, they've referenced two sons here on Wikipedia, but if we go to other sources, they actually say they have three sons. Now, if we go to the Jenny Ancestry page, we have Herod V, king of Chalcis. He's also known as Herod Polio, and it says that he had a son, Aristobulus, married to Salome. But it also says that Herod V, or Herod of Chalcis, was the father of a daughter named Vespasia Pola, and she was said to be the mother of Vespasian, Emperor of Rome. So I'll go into this in a moment, but first let's check Salome. So his son Aristobulus married Salome. So he was father of Agrippa, also Aristobulus of Chalcis, and Herod of Chalcis. So as far as we know, Herod Aristobulus of Chalcis and Salome had three sons. And when we look at the sons' profiles, it says that they have no children. They simply just disappeared. Now, they also had daughters, but it's not recorded here. So this is the same all over the internet on every single web page regarding the Herods. There's no information of these three sons or any family members related to Herod, Aristobulus, and Salome. They claim that the Herod lines became extinct. Now, I don't believe this for a second because, you know, out of three sons, at least one of them's had to have a family or children, not to mention if there were sisters. And I've also found links to other Herod lines going through the family of Pergamon, and they simply changed their name to Roman names. And yet the information regarding Herod saying there's no Herods left, the Herod family lines of any of the Herods became extinct. So I'm wondering if we research in this Georgian Herod line in Chalcis, or in the ancient Georgian king lines, if we can find any family members related to Herod Aristobulus. So according to this website from Henry Davis and Emperor Vespasian, there's a lot of coincidental information related to the ancestry of Vespasian and the Herods. Now, I can't find any other information about this online. He does quote some academic books that talk about this subject. Descent from King Herod the Great to Emperor Vespasian. Vespasia Pola. So, what's the chances that King Herod V, Herod of Chalcis, had a daughter named Vespasiana Pola? So we have Vespasian's mother named Vespasia Pola. We have Herod's daughter named Vespasiana Pola, and both of these women died in Nicaea. And when we go to Herod of Chalcis, the father, or Herod V, he's also known as Herod of Chalcis or Herod Polio of Chalcis. Now, when we look at the Roman aristocracy through the Vespasian line, this Polio name comes up a lot, and it all the way down through to the family of Constantine the Great. So I actually think that Henry Davis is onto something here. It says on his website, Emperor Vespasian is presented by Roman historians as a military man who had risen to become emperor, but that appears not to be true. Presenting Emperor Vespasian as a commoner would give ordinary soldiers the hope that they could perhaps one day become emperor. The reality, however, was that Vespasian was already a royal, as this genealogy shows. Vespasian was related to the Herodians, who were also the leadership or hierarchy of the sect known as the Sadducees. They left all of the Sadducean believers and all other Jews in Judea, while the Herodians were evacuated to Rome just before Vespasian's siege upon Jerusalem and the temple in Judea. The respected classics professor, the late Gavin Townend, who was an expert in Latin history and Latin historians, and taught at Durham University, did valuable research regarding the Flavian family. He stated in his paper, Some Flavian Connections, the Journal of Roman Studies, Volume 51, Part 1 and 2, 1961, page 54 to 62, before the ascension of Vespasian, it is rare to find anyone outside the imperial royal family holding the consulate more than once. But Vespasian was a royal. Only the connection showing this was hidden by the name changes. He is related to Herod the Great through his grandfather, Herod Polio, later known as Herod of Chalcis or Chalcis. So there's the Herod rulers, there's the Herodian political party, the Sadducees were Herodians, and the Pharisees went over to the Herodians. So anyone left in Judea who were not part of these groups, who believed Jesus and became part of the remnant, or the 144,000, and were redeemed, were killed off by these Edomite converts. And as the old story goes, with Esau hated his brother Jacob and Jacob's descendants, they fought, and, it was all based on Esau's being upset that Jacob took his birthright. But that's how God ordained it. That's what God wanted. He gave it to Jacob, not to Esau, because Esau didn't appreciate what he had, and his nature wasn't to be inclined towards God. We see that in him mixing with the outside nations. But also we see here Emperor Vespasian, if he was a relative of the Herodian kings, besieging Jerusalem and getting his family out before the people of Judea were devastated by the Roman forces. And you can think here, what kind of love did these Herodians have for the people of Judea? And you would have to say none at all, because they rejected the Herodians. So if we look at it today, there's really no Judeans left. There's no Jews, tribe of Judah, southern kingdom left. They were decimated by the Roman forces. Then in time to come, they were decimated by the Crusader forces and the battle between the so-called Christians and the Islamic armies. They were murdered in their thousands. But in saying this, there are still Israelites left. We have the lost tribes of Israel. Some of the Benjamite and Judah tribes did escape with the northern kingdom, and they can be found, I believe, in a lot of the peoples of Europe and the British Isles. In the time of the apostles, they were still in the surrounding regions and nations outside of Israel. So today's Israel don't know that they're Israel. There are people left who are genetic descendants of Israelites, but not the people who claim that they are of this tribe today, because the people that survived from today's tribe of Judah, or from the tribe of Judah from the Roman period, are not descendants of the tribe of Judah. They are a mixed group of people from these Edomite converts. So we have this dragon family, the Herods, And they've taken over the whole system of Judea. They've taken over their rulership. They've taken over the temple system. And at the time of 70 AD, when Jerusalem was destroyed, they were cast to the earth. As it says in Revelation 12, the dragon was cast to the earth, and it was wroth with the woman. The woman is the newly established church by Jesus and the apostles. She flees into the wilderness, and this dragon goes after her, this Pharisaical temple Edomite system. In earlier times, the descendants of the northern kingdom of Israel had been cast out into the earth, into the peoples and the nations surrounding them. So there are descendants of Israel left. They just don't know who they are. Some do, but on the whole, this is being hidden from the people of the earth who the descendants of Israel are. So coming back to modern times, we have Zelensky declaring he wants a big Israel. We've had many wars in this region throughout the 20th century, and there's a lot of tension in regards to politics and controlling factions between Russia and the people who want this region back. And now we can see that they want it back because they want to create this big Israel. It says Ukrainian President Voldemort Zelensky has said he wants his country to become a big Israel with its own face after the Russian invasion ends, stressing that security would likely be the main issue in Ukraine during the post-war period. In comments to local media posted on the president's official website on Tuesday, Zelensky stressed that his vision for Ukraine's post-conflict future included having armed forces in all institutions, supermarkets, cinemas. There will be people with weapons. Sounds like a utopian society. So this is said to be the border of ancient Israel at one point in time. There's other maps that show the borders of the kingdom of Israel during the time of David, or that was given to David. But you can see in this particular map here that it includes Lebanon, going up, including Syria, Turkey, and Armenia Minor, where the family of Herod were rulers. That was Aristobulus and Salome, including parts of Iraq and Jordan. So in Georgia, we have this melting pot between the Khazarian converted Jews from the Ukrainian region and the Caucasus, and the Edomite converts from Judea and from Israel. We have the Herod kings who were ruling all throughout Armenia Minor, Turkey, Cilicia, and then this later on converted to the trading families of the Silk Road, which basically was the economic and power behind all of these nations in those days. Khazarian people were converted to their belief system simply to control merchant trading on the Silk Road. And the Edomites had been part of the spice incense road far earlier than the Khazarian people were involved with this trading system. The Edomite of the time of the Hasmonean kings was a mixture between Phoenician and Arab, as well as the sons of Esau. And they weren't forced to convert, they actually just integrated into the Judean kingdom. And they united under their religion to have the power of trading both east and west in between the borders of conflicting countries. At the time of 70 AD, the Roman attacks on Judea, on Jerusalem, we have this mass exodus of Jews fleeing to this region of Georgia or Chalcis, And it makes you wonder if they were of the Edomite conversion. They knew that they had some protection by the authorities of this region, who were Aristobulus, who would have been ruling, or his father around this time. We also had a mass exodus to France in Lyon, which was a Roman colony of Lugdunum. And this is where the Herod, son of Herod the Great, was banished by the Roman emperor. This was Antipas, and likely Herod Archelaus was banished there also. So the French Jews were well-known Silk Road traders. They were said to be connected to the Radhanite Jews of the Silk Road trade, who then in turn converted the Khazarian Ashkenazi Jews to the faith that they followed, which was Talmudic in nature. It was not the same faith as the Israelites. It was a Babylonian mystery religion. And I'm wondering what kind of life the Herods had established for themselves in this region. They may have been banished there, but were they part of the political class? And did they continue to infiltrate into Roman politics and society in Lyon, in France, in those days? And did the Exodus end up there simply because there was some kind of political preference to these people in this region? So if we zoom in this region, we have Ukraine up in the north of the Black Sea, we have Georgia to the east and Israel to the south, and we have this big Israel they want to declare to the world. Is Russia in on it? I'm not sure, but probably, seeing Russia was taken over by the Bolsheviks in the early 20th century. We've heard talk that there's going to be a Khazarian capital in the Ukraine and a Sephardi or Edomite, if you want to put it that way, headquarters in Georgia. We have Israel already occupied. And when I say Sephardi, when you look in the book, The Non-Jewish Origins of the Sephardic Jews by Paul Wexler, he states that the origins of the Sephardi Jews is Arabic. Now, when we look at the Edomites' history, they say that the Edomites were a blend of the descendants of Esau, the Phoenicians, and the Arabs, and it's highly likely that the Sephardi Jews are of this origin. So I guess it's interesting. We'll see if this happens, but what's really interesting is that as they are bringing this together at this period in time, they are trying to resurrect the Belt and Road project, which is the old Silk Road. They're trying to establish a new merchant system and empire. They're trying to establish a new global empire that mimics the ancient Tartarian empire, ironically, and it excludes America. Obviously, its basis will be this big Israel region, including China to the east and Europe to the west, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to the American continent, or where I am in Australia. I think we're just going to be on the fringe of this grand Belt and Road project. So Armenia Minor, which was part of the kingdom ruled by Aristobulus and Salome, had in later times strong relations with Genoa and the Venetian traders, and there was actually a big seaport here in the Black Sea. So in this article, the Pearl of the Mediterranean, Cilician Armenia at the crossroads of east-west trade. So in 1045, the Bagratid Armenian kingdom ceased to exist. So this is around the time of the Crusades. The secular kingdom had been the gravitational center uniting Armenians, forming a centralizing pro-state movement. However, when the state system collapsed, it led to a political, economic, and cultural crisis. As a result, the pro-state counterweight to centrifugal forces lost its effectiveness. Armenians began to emigrate en masse from the Armenian highlands in two main directions, Cilicia and Crimea. Armenia had a large class of merchants and artisans due to the fact that the capital, Ani, and other Armenian cities had become large centers of international trade during the Bagratid Dynasty. And you can guarantee these would have been of the Silk Road trading class. When the kingdom fell, this class had to find a way to overcome the new crisis. Hence, those emigrating en masse, besides those from the nobility and ruling classes, were first and foremost merchants and artisans who were looking for new countries to continue developing their economic endeavors. For this, Cilicia had exceptional conditions. Armenians had been in Cilicia since the time of Tigranes the Great, 95 to 55 BC. Even today, Cilician lands are considered one of the most fertile in the world. Its fields can be harvested twice a year. Meanwhile, the Cilician highlands offer ample space for grazing livestock. The long Mediterranean beaches only add to Cilicia's beauty. So we can see that we have this merchant class in this Armenian region which was initially ruled by Herod kings that, mind you, just disappeared off the face of history. And I dare say that they stayed in this region. Moreover, the Arab-Byzantine wars, which had taken place until the 11th century, had left much territory in Cilicia almost empty. Towns and fortresses were abandoned. Hence, the Armenians who ended up there quickly occupied those lands. By 1070, Armenian principalities started to form in Cilicia, the most prominent of which was the Rubenid noble house. Now there's a Israelite name for you. Founded by and named after Prince Reuben, 1080 to 1095, the Rubenids became the foundation for the new Cilician Armenian state. From the beginning of the 13th century, Levin I, the Magnificent, 1187 to 1198 as prince and 1198 to 1219 as king, signed trade agreements with the main economic players of the Mediterranean world, the republics of Venice and Genoa. In 1258, Mongol forces captured Baghdad and destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate. The Mongols created the Ilkhanate, which was part of the Mongol Empire. However, the Ilkhanate played by its own rules. The foundation for this state became Iran, with Tabriz as its capital. Up until that point, the trade routes from Baghdad stretched in different directions towards the Syrian-Palestinian seashore Crusader ports of the Mediterranean. These ports played a pivotal role in the east-west trade route since the time of the First Crusade. By capturing Baghdad and moving the capital north to Tabriz, the Mongols diverted this trade axis northwards. With this geopolitical change, the Cilician Armenian state gained an unprecedented role and became the main gateway for trade route from Tabriz to the Mediterranean. The Armenians had prepared for this vital international endeavor since 1254 when King Hetem 1226 to 1269 traveled to Karakorum, the capital of the Mongol Empire, and met with Mongol ruler Möngke Khan 1251 to 1259. He returned with the comprehensive agreement, taking into account that the ultimate goal of the Mongols was to amass great wealth. The importance of the role of Cilicia in East-West trade relations paved the way for the agreement made between Hetem and Möngke. Cilician Armenia was involved in the most ambitious geopolitical and economic endeavor in the time, connecting the Silk Road through the Mediterranean Sea to Europe's cities. Well-known medieval historian Eliyahu Ashtur noted that the role of Cilician Armenia in the trade connections between southern Europe and the Levant exceeded that of Cyprus and Crete. By the 13th century, Cilician Armenia was one of the largest centers of international trade. Agricultural and manufactured products, both imported and locally made, played an important role
Many foreign language sources included evidence of Armenian products that were well known in the international market and had reached the far corners of Europe. Armenian cotton, for example, was considered to be of exceptionally high quality. Armenian cotton is mentioned in the source preserved in the archives of the city of Bruges. Fabrics made out of fine goat wool, which the Armenian call tpsi, was popular in Europe. Now, what's interesting is around the same time, we have the traders mentioned in the plagues and the Khazarian Tartarians having disputes with the other traders on the Silk Road. So on this website, War History Online, it says birth of the Black Plague, the Mongol siege on Kaffa. So in 1345, the city of Kaffa was razed by a vicious pandemic in what would centuries later be recognized as the first use of biological warfare in history. After successfully repelling the first Mongol siege in 1343, Kaffa certainly expected Jani Beg, the leader of Mongols, to strike again. But when he finally did in 1345, he did not just come roaring with his Mongol army. He came with something else, something more sinister, the Black Death. Kaffa, presented by Theodosia, was a city set in Crimea on the north coast of the Black Sea. After the capture of Crimea in 1230s, the city of Kaffa came under the dominance of the Mongols. The Mongols in the late 13th century allowed a group of traders from the Republic of Genoa to establish a trading settlement there. Due to its success, Kaffa virtually monopolized trade in the Black Sea region. It became a major seaport housing one of Europe's largest slave markets. The Mongols benefited immensely from the Genesee business in the bustling city as it earned them access to Italy's largest commercial centre while stimulating trade across the vast empire. However, while many of the Mongols had been practicing Muslims from the 1200s, the Genesee merchants were Christians. And all I can say is if they were Christians, they wouldn't be trading in slaves. They were converso Christians. This religious disparity between them would occasionally result in disputes. Pallid embers of hatred that would grow in strength as conflicting beliefs fanned and fed them. These embers of hatred would burst into flames in 1343 in the city of Tana. After a fight between Genesee Christians and local Muslims in Tana, one Muslim local was found dead. Sensing the trouble that loomed like pregnant clouds over their heads, the Genesee fled to Kaffa, where they were granted protection. Not so long after their flight, the Mongols came after them. They demanded the city hand over the culprits. It came as a shock to them when Kaffa refused. Infuriated, Jani Beg chose to attack. So in 1343, the Mongols laid siege to the city of Kaffa. Kaffa did not turn out to be as feeble as the Mongols expected. Staring the Golden Horde in the face, Kaffa struck back in defense. Kaffa had access to the sea, and they made adequate use of this, bringing in supplies, reinforcements from Italy. The first siege ended after the Mongols retreated, suffering about 15,000 deaths and heavy damage to the siege equipment. Jani Beg took his army home, but his mind still raged. In 1345, Jani Beg returned, bearing more than just his siege machinery. The Black Death was a plague which had been ravaging Central Asia since 1331. It was said to be caused by Yersinia pestis and is present in fleas carried by rodents. It travelled along the Silk Road as rodents migrated from Asia's famine-ridden lands until it came to Crimea when the siege was ongoing. While the Mongols laid siege to the city of Kaffa, they were struck by the plague. According to an account of the events, Crimea, the Tatars, or the Mongols, were suddenly struck by the pandemic, falling on all sides as though they had been struck by thunder. With lumps on their joints and dark marks on their faces, they developed a putrid fever and were beyond help neither from doctors nor their god. The spread of the plague through the ranks of the Mongols demoralized the army, and a large bulk of them lost interest in the siege. However, the Mongols would not back off, not without giving Kaffa a piece of their torment. They put the corpse of their dead on their catapults and flung them over the defensive walls of Kaffa. The dwellers of Kaffa watched as rotten bodies fell from the skies, crashing on their soil, spreading their putrid smell in all directions. The Christians would neither hide nor flee from the havoc that rained down upon them. They moved as many rotten bodies as they could, dumping them into the sea as quickly as they could, but then it was too late. The Black Death was already in Kaffa. The siege ended in 1347 after negotiations between the Mongols and the city, but then the plague had begun its work. So already here we have these trading routes established. We have the Khazarian link here, the Mongols, the Golden Horde, and we have the Genoa Venetian banking families connected, and then we have the Pierleoni banking family from Rome, who I now believe are direct descendants from Herods, or are related to the Herod Roman line. And we have this Pierleoni family and Pope Urban calling for crusade. And all of this is related to trade and the Silk Road. And what was the city that was the heart of the Silk Road? And I know there were many other cities that along this road that were powerful, but in the time of Solomon and his deal with the king of Tyre, Solomon also warred with the nations. He married 1,000 wives and concubines from other nations, other powers, and he converted to their pagan religions. And he was the typology of this whole system of church and state, and the people of God whoring with the outside nations and flirting with Mystery Babylon. It was Jerusalem, and I believe this is what's depicted in Revelation as the whore who gets burnt. I think that it's a temple and political system, church and state, that is involved in merchantism, as Jesus, through the money changes out of the temple, and he overthrew the tables, and he said to the merchants in the temple, "Take these things hence, make not my Father's house a house of merchandise." When we see the woman in Revelation 17, and written on her head is Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, and all the things that the merchants do with her, when she finally burns, they stand back and they cry for the things that won't be sold in her anymore. And in Revelation 17:16 it says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire." Now this is what happened in the Crusades. They cannibalized the people of the region, they burnt Jerusalem, and they destroyed the trading route. This is the main reason for the trading route of the Silk Road to decline, was the fact that the Crusade Wars destroyed the trading routes between East and West. And right in the middle of East and West is Jerusalem. The Bible tells us that she's the city, and it's the city that persecuted and murdered the saints. And there's only one city where that happened. I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So who were the traders? Who were the merchants in the temple? And it was the Talmudic believers of the Silk Road, the traders. We have the conversion of the Khazarian, Tartarian merchants from the Edomite, Radhanite merchants who converted many years earlier through the Maccabean Wars. And these were the merchants of the trading routes. They were on the Silk Road, they were on the Sea Road, the banking elite from Rome, the banking elite from Genoa and from Venice. So why is this important today? Well, we now have this Ukrainian-Russian war. We have Zelensky declaring that at the end of this war, they will be forming a big Israel. And we have Benjamin Netanyahu claiming that most of the population of today's Jews or Israelis are in fact Khazarian Ashkenazim. As I said, if you read the book The Non-Jewish Origins of the Sephardic Jews, the Sefardis are the Edomite conversion that moved out after the Roman destruction of Jerusalem, and he has traced through linguistics that they were in fact Arabic, and we know that the people of Edom were a mixture of Esau's descendants, Phoenicians and Arabs, and they took control of the silk and spice road trades while the southern kingdom of Judah was in captivity in Babylon. Today, they are trying to resurrect this ancient kingdom that gave them so much power in the past. And the Bible tells us that if this system is the whore system, then she's not coming back. She's being burnt and destroyed. However, they are trying to resurrect this Belt and Road project. They're trying to create Big Israel as its diadem in the center, I guess you could call it. And they are trying to destroy our financial system and create a new one based on this merchant system of the Belt and Road project. And they will be, again, the most powerful people who are running this. Now, today we do have a system where they run it anyway via banking, but what they're trying to do is decentralize nations and place everybody under the one system and one currency. Despite the fact that they are running it through central banks and through the banks of London, they still have this problem with countries and nations and national sovereign laws getting in the way of their system. So I believe what they're doing is they are crashing the whole system and they are giving us a new one. And I think that this is part of Revelation 20, where the dragon, the bankers, and the Gog Magog are coming against the saints, the system of the saints, the people of the saints. And if this system did get off the ground and if we have to live within this system, then God help us all, because I don't believe that anybody can live for very long within this system that they have planned for humanity. So why Georgia? Well, I have a feeling that Georgia is going to be one of the capitals of this big Israel system. In this article from the Middle East Eye, is Georgia in love with Israel? And this was written 3 years ago, nearly 4 years ago. As ties between the two countries continue to strengthen, Georgia may be on track to become the Israel of the Caucasus. In August, Georgia Today, an English-language newspaper of the eponymous former Soviet Republic, featured a verbose analysis headlined, "Georgia is the Israel of the Caucasus, a concept worth considering." Following the numerous twists and turns, including a quote from the late Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir, noting that if we have to choose between being dead and pitted and being alive with a bad image, we would rather be alive and have the bad image. Well, that's an interesting quote, to be honest. The article appears to conclude that there are many prospects for further developing the Georgia-US bilateral relationship. Successful development, we are left to assume, would ideally propel the wannabe NATO members into a special relationship akin to that enjoyed between the US and its favorite Israeli partner in crime. In other words, the whole Israel of the Caucasus concept is definitely worth considering. Not that the concept is really anything new. Rewind for a moment to 2008 and the 5-day war between Georgia and Russia that began when Georgia attacked breakaway South Ossetia. The electronic Intifada's ally Ali Abunimah, noting Israel's intimate involvement in the war, making venture on account of hundreds of millions of dollars in arms and combat training to Georgia over previous years, speculated that the Georgian government may have been endeavoring to play the role of the Israel of the Caucasus, a loyal servant of US ambitions in that region. Let's just strike US and let's just say the Israeli advisors of the US's ambitions. Among these ambitions was the border US scheme to encircle Russia. And I'll just add again there that it's all done on US tax-paying dollar. While the training services provided by the real Israel to the Caucasian one were said to involve officers from Israel Shin Bet Secret Service, which has for decades carried out extrajudicial executions and torture of Palestinians in the occupied territories, as well as the Israeli police and major Israeli arms companies. Although more overt forms of bellicose collaboration were curtailed after Georgia's poor showing in 2008, this hasn't stopped notorious Israeli arms manufacturer Albert System for opening a factory in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi, or put an end to efforts to draw parallels between the Israeli geopolitical predicament and the Georgian one. And we can see who's probably arming the Ukraine and the illegal arms trade, as well as the illegal human trafficking. The Crimea was the ancient capital, the largest slave trading port. A December 2017 dispatch in the Jerusalem Post, for example, argues that both Georgia and Israel are stuck in tough neighborhoods, with Russia occupying two formerly Georgian provinces, Abkhazia, South Ossetia. Israel feels a similar threat from much larger Iran stationing its soldiers near its Syrian border. Never mind that, if we want to talk about occupation, the state of Israel is rather synonymous with the term, having spent numerous decades busily occupying not only Palestinian but also Syrian land. Tough neighborhood indeed. Well, it's tough when you're trying to oppress a people in their own land. The Post article highlights numerous other exciting opportunities for Israeli financial exploits in the Georgian neighborhood, in fields like high-tech, agriculture, and cybersecurity. Furthermore, Israeli real estate investments in Georgia abound, and even growing numbers of Israeli tourists visit the country each year. In fact, judging from my own recent visit to Georgia and disturbingly regular encounters with the Israeli flag in Tbilisi, the Israel of the Caucasus appeared to be a pretty apt description. Even more so given the presence of the city of an entity called Israeli House, which the Post describes as Hasbara pilot that could be adopted worldwide in order to boost Israel's international image and preemptively counteract the work of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions BDS movement. In 2016, Israeli House assisted with the production of Tbilisi of the first international forum. I hope I'm saying Tbilisi right. So the first international forum on Hasbara, conducted with the backing of the Israeli Knesset, AIPAC, and other charitable organizations. The flyer for the event promoted a concert dubbed "We Stand with Israel" and a focus on BDS as a modern form of anti-Semitism. This, of course, was a mere 2 years after the Israeli military had undertaken to slaughter some 2,251 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip over the course of 50 days. But hey, BDS is the real problem. Yeah, anyone who contests what Israel wants is anti-Semitic. Fast forward to May of this year, and Georgia was among the devoted countries in attendance at the US Embassy opening in Jerusalem. which transpired alongside yet another bloodbath in Gaza. As it turns out, Georgia also has services to offer Israelis on the more life-giving, as opposed to life-eradicating end of the spectrum, and is a popular and cheap destination for surrogate-seeking Israelis as well as other aspiring parents from across the globe. And here we have this human trafficking situation. Siggy Verterman, who is conducting postdoctoral research on the international surrogacy industry between Israel and Georgia, commented in a recent email to me in the lucrative ties between Israeli surrogacy agencies and Georgian fertility clinics, considering Israel's pronatalist climate that is both shaped by religious prescriptions to be fruitful and multiply and Zionist ambitions to consolidate a Jewish demographic majority in Israel, Palestine. Israeli intending parents were among the first to arrive at Georgia's surrogacy frontier. An August Jerusalem Post article, meanwhile, quotes Georgian ambassador to Israel, Petra Kalandazi's calculation of 26 centuries of friendship between Jews and Georgians, and the stronger and stronger ties between Israel and Georgia, who he stresses have the same strategic partner, i.e. a certain global superpower responsible for raining death and destruction across Iraq, Afghanistan, and a wide array of other global locales. With so many special relationships in the mix, it seems there are more than enough opportunities for being alive with a bad image. And this was written by Belen Fernandez. Now, just because Georgia, the Ukraine, who are, united in their political opinions, obviously, are fighting with Russia, doesn't mean that Russia is a positive side. We have these philosophers of this tribe that basically love Hegel and use dualistic politics. So not only do they love dualistic religion, they use dualistic politics against us, which is Hegelian dialectic of playing both sides to get the one result. And what they want at the moment is to crash the nations of the world, especially Europe and America. And this is what they're doing, using this Ukrainian war to cause an energy crisis and a food crisis in Europe and bring them to their knees. So they're trying to resurrect this ancient trading system with the Belt and Road like a phoenix from the flame. And ironically, one of the flags of Tartaria was the phoenix. But we have China who are building this system for them. We have all these ghost cities that they've built across the Central Asian region. Even in Sri Lanka, we've had China build a lot of infrastructure at the expense of the Sri Lankan people and their economy. And now this infrastructure is just being left empty because nobody can afford to use it. But I think that they're building these structures with a long-term plan, not a short-term plan, and they're already built and in place for them then to overlay this new system. So we have Turkey, and in the region of Turkey, new modern futuristic cities going ahead. We have Saudi Arabia who've been building these new cities that everybody is saying is failing and nobody's using them, but as again I said, it's a long-term plan. They want to implement this new system into it. It doesn't quite suit the system we have now. So they're bankrupting countries, for example, like Sri Lanka, to build these structures and put the infrastructure in place. They're using the old system and bankrupting it using taxpayer dollars so that when it crumbles, we'll ask for a new system, and they have the system in place to give it. Some of these countries are taking loans from China to build these structures. So people are blaming China for this, and China in on it, but it's not China who are orchestrating the whole plan. And they don't care about this financial system. They don't care if everybody's bankrupt. They don't care if there's nothing left. They're using it to build the infrastructure and get their system ready for when they decide to crash it. So why is Georgia so important for them? And I don't think it's Georgia, the United States. It's Georgia, the Caucasus, and the Middle Eastern region. And perhaps this is why they placed these stones in Georgia in the United States, because at that time in the 80s, they couldn't put the true name of what they wanted on it. I think that these guide stones were about their plan to create this new system and what the definitions of that system were about. And now that they've destroyed them, it shows that they're about to implement this system. And if you look at this historically, as I've said, we have the Edomite dragon people, we have the Herod dragon represented in Revelation 12, and now we have the Khazarian Gog-Magog people, and we have this alliance between the dragon and Gog-Magog, and it's bringing in a new merchant system that's coming after the saints in their Sukkot who have camped in their tents or in their cities around the world. It's coming against the cities of the world. In Revelation 20, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that he must be loosed a little season. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and the judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven, and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. Now, if we are in a time of deception like never before, this explains that when the dragon is released, that he goes out to deceive people. You know, how much have we been deceived? We've had our history changed. We've had information hidden about the history of the earth, and we've been given this false narrative and pantomime system. Everything that we see on television, all of these events that happen, seem to be Hollywood scripted. They're writing scripts for our reality. This is the Plato cave scenario, where they're writing our reality and acting it out through the media, and we believe it. This is the great deception. So here we have a connection. We have Gog and Magog, the City of London parade. They've contained the Russian bear. So Gog and Magog are controlling Russia. Here we have Gog and Magog protecting the City of London. We have a phoenix coming out of the flame. Is that the new Belt and Road project? We have their Khazarian Big Israel being resurrected. And we have the dragons protecting the City of London bankers also, with the St. George Cross. So here in the City of London, the home of global banking and global jewelry, we have both the Khazarian Gog-Magog and the Edomite dragon represented. So why Georgia? Is this because the dragon family have always ruled Georgia, Armenia Minor or Armenia Lesser? The descendants of Salome, who danced for the head of John the Baptist. And what's strange here is that in Revelation 20 we have this verse 4, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. Perhaps this could be a reference to John, but Christians were also beheaded in the Kingdom of Rome, those that were Roman citizens. So here we have the Georgian flag, the cross of St. George, the Maltese cross. We have the star of the Maltese cross, 8 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is the star of Inanna, the goddess of the Hittites, the goddess of the Khazarians, the goddess of the people of this region. Star of Inanna goes through every single world religion that we know of today. It represents Venus or being enlightened. So as the legend tells it, St. George was a dragon-slaying Christian martyr, a true hunk by medieval standards. While a story that has captured imaginations, St. George's legacy involved much more than mythical beasts. The man, who was St. George? St. George is believed to be born in Cappadocia in modern-day Turkey, sometime during the late 3rd century to Christian parents. While not much is known of his early life, St. George's legendary status really begins after he became a soldier in the Roman army under Emperor Diocletian. Military employment suited George well until Diocletian began implementing a religious cleanse that saw the expulsion and execution of Roman Christians. Depending on how the story is told, Diocletian tried to tempt St. George conversion with the promise of wealth and power before he was executed. Alternative versions say the execution came after 7 years of torture, but all the versions, St. George's determination to keep his faith resulted in the Christian conversion of others following his decapitation in AD 303. George was hailed as a hero and saint across the Christian faith, but it would be another 900 years before any dragons got involved. The religious crusades that plagued the 11th and 13th centuries brought about a resurgence of popularity for the saint. St. George, martyrdom and military service made him an appealing figure to invoke for protection and guidance, such as the red and white cross that Crusaders, most notably the Knights of Templar, wore, is also known as St. George's Cross. At some point around the 11th century, this revival of St. George also resulted in the legend he is most famously associated with. According to folklore, St. George rescued a princess who was about to become dinner for a dragon that had settled near the city of Stalin, allegedly in modern-day Libya. As luck would have it, St. George was passing through and saved the princess by beheading the dragon. His bravery is said to have inspired people in Stalin to convert to Christianity, a great story but more fantasy than reality. A tale of a noble Christian soldier coming to the rescue of a princess fit perfectly with medieval notions of chivalry and courtly love, ideas that became the driving ethos behind Western Christianity's notions of chivalry and social order. These ideas were also popularized by the legends of King Arthur and the knights and tempted a pious King Edward III to create his own Arthurian court. It's no surprise that in 1344, when Edward III created his own chivalrous knightly order, the Order of the Garter, St. George was named as their patron saint. It remains the most precious British order of chivalry today. Ironically, the Order of the Golden Fleece was modelled on the Order of the Garter. It says, on the 10th of January 1430, during the marriage celebration for Duke Philip the Good and his third wife, Princess Isabella of Portugal, the Herald of Flanders announced to the assembled guests that his master, his most serene and powerful prince, the Lord, the Duke of Burgundy, Count of Flanders and Artois, and Palgrave of Namur, had founded a order, the Order of the Golden Fleece. Isabella's mother was the granddaughter of Edward III of England, who had founded the Order of the Garter. So what's really weird about this is that the connection of the Golden Fleece to Georgia and the connection of the Order of the Garter to Georgia as well. It goes on to say that Philip the Good combined aspects of the Greek myth of Jason and the quest for the Golden Fleece with the biblical story of Gideon in the book of Judges to lay a solid spiritual foundation for the order. Yeah, what a exoteric story. The outstanding artisans of the day created elaborate and exquisite robes and collars for members who wear at chapter meeting a festive occasion. The Order of the Golden Fleece was intended as a knightly brotherhood and a friendly alliance of noblemen. Now, the Order of the Garter was set up by Edward III, created in 1348. In 1948, to celebrate 600 anniversaries of the founding of the Order of King George VI, reinstated the procession of the Knights of the Order through the Windsor Castle to a service in St George's Chapel. H.R.H. Prince William of Wales was invested as the 1000th Knight of the Order in 2008, the 60th anniversary of Princess Elizabeth and the Duke of Edinburgh being installed as members of the Order of the Garter in St George's Chapel. So these families all have links back to Georgia through these orders, and we find that they're linked to the House of Burgundy. Now I'm running out of time in this video, but I'm going to go and investigate this House of Burgundy and try to find where they hail from. So the Order of the Golden Fleece is an honor award by the government of Georgia. It was established in 1998 and comes next in ranks to the Order of St. Nicholas. The order is named after the mythical Golden Fleece, which was held in Colchis in what is now Western Georgia. So the Golden Fleece, in Greek mythology, the Golden Fleece is the fleece of the golden winged ram, Chrysomallus, that rescued Phrixus and brought him to Colchis, where Phrixus then sacrificed it to Zeus. Phrixus gave the fleece to King Aeetes, who kept it in a sacred grove, whence Jason and the Argonauts stole it with the help of Medea, Aeetes' daughter. The fleece is a symbol of authority and kingship. The Order of the Golden Fleece, the Distinguished Order of the Golden Fleece, is a Catholic order of chivalry founded in Bruges by Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy, in 1430 to celebrate his marriage to Isabella of Portugal. Today, two branches of the order exist, namely Spanish and the Austrian Fleece. The current Grand Master is Felipe VI, King of Spain, and Karl von Habsburg, head of the House of Habsburg-Lorraine, respectively. The Grand Chaplain of the Austrian branch is Cardinal Christoph Schonborn, Archbishop of Vienna. Grand Masters of the Order include Charles I, Philip II, Philip III, Philip IV, Charles II, Philip V, Louis I, Philip V, Ferdinand VI, Charles III, Charles IV, Ferdinand VII, Isabella II, Amadeo I, Alfonso XII, Alfonso XIII, Juan, Count of Barcelona, Juan Carlos I, Felipe VI. Living members: Felipe VI of Spain, Juan Carlos I of Spain, Constantine II of Greece, Carl XVI Gustav of Sweden, Akihito Emperor Emeritus of Japan, Beatrix Princess of the Netherlands, Marguerite II of Denmark, Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, Albert II of Belgium, Harold V of Norway, Simeon Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, former Tsar Simon II of Bulgaria and former Prime Minister of the Republic of Bulgaria, Henry Grand Duke of Luxembourg, Javier Solana, Victor Gracia de la Conca, Nicolas Sarkozy, co-prince of Andorra, Enrique V Iglesias. I wonder if he's related to the singer. Leonor, Princess of Asturias. Agnus Dei is the Latin name under which the Lamb of God is honoured with the Catholic Mass and other Christian liturgies, descending from the Latin liturgical tradition. So the Lamb of God, or the Agnus Dei, is depicted as a lamb with a halo that is holding a cross or flag with its cocked foreleg. Like other Templar symbols, this too has its share of variations. The lamb is symbolic of the martyred Christ and also referenced in the Bible through the words of John the Baptist as he baptized Jesus, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world." Now, I actually think this has a different symbolism altogether, and I think it might be tied to this golden fleece, or the Order of the Golden Fleece and the Order of the Garter. We have this lamb, it's on a book with its paw around a flag. The flag is a St. George's cross, and the lamb has a halo. Now, ironically, the Venetian lion has a very similar symbolism. It's got its paw over a book, it has a halo around its head, it has wings other than a flag. Now, how this ties in with the lamb is the wings represent the Maltese cross. So the cross of St. George is very symbolic. It's used by the Templars or the Crusaders. They also use the red cross of Malta. The red cross, it should come as no surprise that the cross is one of the symbols of a religious order of Christian warrior monks. The cross, mainly red, represented the knights' connection to the church as well as their mission. You would find the cross emblazoned upon the mantle. This symbol was not an ornament until 1147, when Pope Eugenius III approved of it. For the Crusader, the red cross represented martyrdom and reminded them of the sacrifice of Christ, so they say. This Maltese cross symbol is also attached to the winged disc symbol, and it goes back to the ancient gods. We have this one here of the Hittites. So this image here is where the Maltese cross comes from. This is an ancient Hittite symbol, but it's also ancient Persian and Babylonian. It ties in with the Zoroastrian god, the Egyptian religion. It's an ancient mystery religion. It goes right back to the very early times of civilization. What's interesting, we have this image represented with a rose as well. So the Rosicrucians, the rose and cross, the rosette. If we interpret this symbol here the same way, you know, this is pretty much the same symbol as the Venetian flag. We have a lamb instead, a golden lamb, ironically here. We have a Maltese cross, or the cross of St. George. It's flying like a flag. It has often depicted with wings, so we don't have the wings here, but we've got the symbolism of the Maltese cross, which is depicted with wings, and we have a halo. So again, this is the Venetian flag. We've got a lion instead of a lamb. We have a halo over its head. We have a book at its feet. And rather than a Maltese cross or a Georgian cross of St. George flying on a flag, we have wings. Here we have the medallion of the Order of the Golden Fleece. So we have this golden fleece, this dead lamb. We've got a rosette with wings. And we have this strange symbol here. It almost looks like the symbol of the Ukraine, but I'm not sure what it means exactly, that symbol in the top portion. But, you know, we've got this Lamb of God symbol associated with the same things. I don't think this lamb represents Jesus. Although the Messiah is called the Lamb of God, he's also called the Lion of Judah. I think that this is referring to the Antichrist in some ways, the Antichrist family and the Antichrist system. I don't think it's referring to Jesus of Nazareth. So in many ancient symbols, this Lamb of God symbol is pictured bleeding into this chalice, which is the Holy Grail. And we know how the Crusaders were obsessed with the Holy Grail. Now, when we look at the symbolism of the Holy Grail, they say it's a cup that gives immortality. In this picture here, we've got the Lamb of God symbolism, the halo, the flag, the St. George cross. The lamb is bleeding into the Holy Grail with the Maltese cross on it. Now, we know from the Soma drink ritual, if we go into the Amanita Muscara Soma drink, which is through all the Persian and ancient mystery religions, all the way through to the Hindu mystery religions, that the Soma milk is said to grant immortality to its drinker. Now, I've always been interested in the King Arthur story and the Holy Grail. If you know anything about this story, the Holy Grail is the cup that Sir Galahad finds for King Arthur to give him back his life and to restore the kingdom. And it's said to be the cup that Jesus drank from at the Last Supper. And it was used by Joseph of Arimathea to catch his blood as he hung on the cross. Now, there's a more esoteric meaning to this Holy Grail than what they're saying here about Jesus and catching his blood. If you listen to the Dan Brown story of the Da Vinci Code, it leads you into the history or into the mythology of the story of Christ marrying Mary Magdalene and having a family. Now, they associate the Grail with this family of Christ's children. Now, I don't for a second believe this happened. I think what the story of the Grail is a family bloodline. They are saying that the king, the true king, the king line is in this Grail. And when we look into the story of the Maltese cross or the winged disc giving immortality, it's the line of kings. It's the line of Nimrod. It's the line of these aristocratic families saying that through their line, they link back to divinity and immortality. They think they have the right to divine rule. So we have this story that these ancestors of Jesus, or from King David, now bloodline of the Holy Grail, ancestors and descendants of Jesus from King David to King Arthur. This family on the royal throne love to pronounce that they are the line of kings sitting on the throne of David. Well, King Herod sat on the throne of David also. And King Herod's wife was a Hasmonean princess. She was of the Judean royalty. So if we have a Herod line on the throne, they do have a claim to saying that they are of the tribe of Judah and that they have a right to this throne. All of Herod's descendants, not all of Herod's descendants, but some of Herod's descendants have a bloodline linking back to the throne of Judea. Getting back to King Arthur, King Arthur's father was Uther Pendragon, and he was said to be a Roman military man. If the story is real, then Uther was a high-ranking Roman aristocracy. And he's a dragon, which is ironic too. Was he a relative of a Herod dragon family line? And I like to bring this up because I think sometimes these people put information into movies. And when we look at the Indiana Jones movie about the Holy Grail, the place that Indy finds the Holy Grail was in Petra. So he goes into this cave in one of the famous Petra buildings that have been carved into the side of the cave, or perhaps even mud flooded. So if we look at this image here from the movie, we've got the Knights Templar here in Petra guarding the Holy Grail, or the secret of immortality, which Indy gives to his father to save his life. In the background, we have this picture of a king. And this king is doing the as above, so below symbolism, like the Baphomet. So we have this picture of Indiana in Petra. Now, what's interesting about Petra is when you look into the history, this is the original Mecca. So going back into Arabic scholars, they say that the Mecca of today was just not a place of importance in this region at this time, and that originally Petra was the Mecca and then it moved. And what's ironic is that Muhammad's wife came from Mecca, There's also another person whose family hails from Nabatea or Petra, and that's King Herod the Great. Herod was born around 72 BCE and in Idumea, south of Judea. He was the second son of Antipater the Idumean, a high-ranking official under Ethnarch Hyrcanus II and Cypros, a Nabatean Arab princess from the city of Petra. From the Nabatea website, nabatea.net, we have some information on Mecca being Petra, and it says, we have shown in this video series that the original Kaaba was located in the city of Petra. It is the ancient foundation in front of the large building known as the Temple of Dushara or Qasr al-Bit. Some people imagine that the Kaaba would have been a very large, impressive monument, but that was not the case. This time it was a squarish looking structure and quite unimpressive. Muhammad's first wife was from Mecca. Her family were rich merchants in Mecca. Now, if Petra was Mecca, then therefore Muhammad's wife was a Nabatean royalty or Nabatean aristocracy. And in light of the fact that Herod's family are Nabatean aristocracy, then what is Steven Spielberg trying to tell us here in the Holy Grail movie? That the Grail, or the family line of the throne of Judea, is found in Petra? Why would the cup be in Petra? Nobody would have been in Petra after the death of Christ and taken the cup from the Last Supper there. He's telling us that the Holy Grail, the family line, can be found in Petra. And I think that is linked to these Herods, the Idumean, Edomite families that traded on the spice road then, the incense road, which became part of the Silk Road. The Idumean Edomites that mixed with the Arabic families and with the Phoenician families. This is documented historically. And these are the dragons, the Uther Pen dragon. It's not obvious, but when you know the symbolism, it seems to fit together. We have the Rosicrucians, or the rose and cross, and this rose and cross rosette symbol goes along with the winged disc symbol that goes back to ancient times. And I'm kind of wondering if this is linked to the War of the Roses. We have the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster. I haven't looked into these family lines, but I'm wondering if they go back to these same family links. This is the Rose of Tudor, which is connecting the York and Lancaster families in one under the Tudor family. Henry Tudor, King Henry VIII. And ironically, the Tudors are well known for their red hair. So was Esau, well known for his red hair. He was ruddy. King David was also ruddy, so it was a genetic trait of Hebrew people, Israelite people. And Esau was related to Jacob. He was his brother. Rosicrucians, a member of secretive 17th and 18th century society devoted to the study of metaphysical, mystical, and alchemical law. An anonymous pamphlet of 1614 about a mythical 15th century knight called Christian Rosicrucius is said to have launched the movement. Now, alchemical, changing from something not precious into a precious metal, perhaps immortality, the changing of the mortal flesh into the Lucifer, the resurrected Lucifer. If you go back and watch my other videos on the Freemasonic teachings and the Baphomet and the androgynous Adam, to reunite the two sexes in one, making them again the Adam Cadman, or the resurrected immortal being, the God man. And this has nothing to do with Jesus of Nazareth again, As Jesus says, I am the bright and morning star. I am the way, I am the gate to heaven. And he's telling these esoteric Babylonian mystery religion believers that there's no other way. You cannot get into heaven any other way. There's no Jacob's ladder into heaven that doesn't go through him. Finally, I'm going to finish this video up on the Rosicrucians and back at the Georgia Guidestones. And we have R.C. Christian allegedly presented builders with a shoebox containing a wooden model of the monument along with 10 pages of extremely detailed specifications. Seated at the highest point in the entire country, the monument was precisely engineered to track the movements of the sun and the stars. Depending on where they stand and which slots or holes they appear through, visitors can see the sunrise during an equinox or solstice or locate the North Star. Some people suspect the Rosicrucian order financed the project since Rose Cross Christian, aka Christian Rosicruce, was the founder of the mystical society, the Rosicrucian order. Many suspect that the Rosicrucians were financed building of the Georgia Guidestones. So here we come full circle. Who is this family? What is their holy grail? It's definitely not that of Jesus of Nazareth. It's an esoteric, occult, ancient family bloodlines. And they link back to Georgia and beyond there. So I think in Georgia we have the combination of the Edomite and the Khazarian believers of this religion. It's possible that in the story of the Silk Road we have two groups of Jewish traders. We have the Radhanite Jewish traders, we have the Khazarian Jewish traders. At the time of the sea trade, we have the Genoa families and we have the Venetian families, both bearing similar but different versions of the flag of the winged disc lion or the winged lamb, which is also represented by the goddess Inanna standing on the back of the lion. And the traders, the merchants, the Bible Revelation talks about the merchants wailing when the woman burns, when Jerusalem burns. I think that's already happened. Who are they? What are they? I don't know. I'm just pointing out the symbols here. I think they're the Herods. I think they're related to the Herods. But I think they're also related to these other royal family bloodlines. Caesar, the Herods married into the Caesar line. Caesar married into the Egyptian family line through Cleopatra. And I think they think that they're gods on earth, to be honest. Just like the ancient rulers did, like Nimrod, like Pharaoh. They're all depicted as, in the Bible, Pharaoh and Nimrod as dragons. They're depicted as trees. And they're depicted as raising themselves up into heaven. They are haughty and proud, and they are the Lucifer. This is the Lucifer spirit. And I do believe that there is a Satan. I do believe the serpent in the garden, but I don't believe that Lucifer is the one and the same. I think that Lucifer is man declaring himself as God, and these rulers of the earth do declare themselves as God. So also the rebus, or the androgynous Adam, stands on the dragon. And is this a form of depiction of St. George? We have the Kadesh, which is the transgender priestesses of all these ancient regions. And then we have these Kardashians, who are Armenian. Are they related to these ancient Armenian families, which are linked to the Georgia region? The Herods were kings of Armenia, Armenia Minor, and Chalcis. Chalcis in Syria. There's Colchis in Georgia. There's Chalcis, which they believe is in Syria. Very similar names. Cilicia. These regions are all in the same area, and they all had haired kings running them at one point. Take a look at these hips. We have these big fake silicon pads injected in or inserted into the hips. They've probably got hip prosthetic implants that they can get on their hip bones to give them more female-shaped pelvis. I say this because when you take a look at younger pictures of these people, they don't have hips this wide or this big. And if we look at the size of their shoulders, if we removed all of these plastic add-ons, then they would have profiles of men. I mean, the hips to shoulder ratio is only female because of all the fake injections they've got put in there. Is it possible that this family is related to some ancient Armenian family line that goes all the way back to the time of Christ and are related to these trading families that were prominent in this region? Is it possible that Georgia will be the capital of this big Israel project and the heart of the new Belt and Road initiative, along with the new economic and financial system that seems to be getting rolled out for everybody on Earth? So thanks for listening, everybody, and see you in the next video.